Mark Twain and Leo Tolstoy. I read a lot of them in prison, and I'm going to use some of their quotes as I discuss the Elizabeth Holmes trial case today, starting with Mark Twain, who once wrote, "Quitting smoking is easy. I've done it hundreds of times." When I think of that quote, I think of Elizabeth Holmes, who probably didn't begin Theranos in '03 with intentions to defraud people of $1 billion and put people's patients' life and their health and their mental well-being at risk. I've said previously, I think it's a real sociopath that goes into business with the idea to steal and defraud and to hurt. And through the hundreds of comments we've received from both of our YouTube channels at Prison Professors and White Collar Advice, there are certainly some people that think she's sociopathic. I'm not a psychiatrist. I have a degree from U.S.C., and I was a stockbroker, a real estate agent, went to federal prison, and I've worked in this space, in the white-collar crime space, for 13 years. So I'm not in a position to deduce her mindset. Though if I were a betting person, I'd bet she started this business in 2003 at the age of 19 after dropping out of Stanford with good intentions. Then what? What happened next? So when I think of Mark Twain saying it's easy to quit, and then he started up the next day and quit again, I think of Elizabeth Holmes and raising money. I think what she said to these older, successful, polished investors in a room making promises about this device that could become more reliable, save people's lives, become more efficient, ensure that people wouldn't have to have that dart to get that blood, but a little prick. She knew the benefits as a marketer. She knew what she was selling at a very, very young age. So while she had good intentions, I have no doubt when she was fearful or wondering if it could continue, if she could sell more of it, much like Mark Twain had quit smoking the day before and went back the next day, no doubt in her mind, she said, "This will be the last lie. I'll do better tomorrow. This will be the last lie. I'll do better tomorrow." And over time, it was a sustained period of just lying and theft and greed, in my opinion. And I want to share this with you because on the way to the Dodger game last week, and it was a great win, and I'm going to the game tomorrow, which I'm excited about, I spoke with a friend of mine, a journalist, who said, "This Elizabeth Holmes," I don't know why I'm whispering in my own home. It's 8:15 on a Sunday night. My kids are sleeping, but I want to knock this out. It's fresh in my mind. A journalist on the way to the Dodger game said, "This Elizabeth Holmes trial has so much of the makings of the Varsity Blues case." And I said, I don't see the similarities, real similarities between Operation Varsity Blues and the Elizabeth Holmes trial. So I thought there could be some value in filming this video to address some of the similarities, but really play on the differences. As a disclosure, White Collar Advice, the company I lead, is very involved in the Varsity Blues case. We're working with at least 10 families, and they too have had their share of negative press and a lot of pain and a lot of terrible things thrown their way. So I'm a little bit jaded because they're our friends and we've worked with so many of them. But even if we didn't work with them, even if we didn't know many of them, nothing in this video would change. Nothing I would say would be different, because you look at her conduct of Miss Holmes and you look at the conduct of the parents in the Varsity Blues case. So let me quickly get out of the way the similarities. Extensive press, they're white, they're privileged, they're rich, they've been indicted, they've all gone through a government investigation. The majority of the parents in the Varsity Blues case have all been to prison. Most of them are home. Other than those similarities, that's a wrap. That's it. So I really struggle at this comparison because there really is no comparison other than what I just touched on. Because if you look at the conduct of Elizabeth Holmes, and sure, some people will say I'm a sympathizer to these parents in the Varsity Blues case. Let me tell you why. They accepted responsibility. And also, I have got to make very clear, there is a difference between lying once or twice in an out-of-character moment versus lying over a sustained period of time, like Twain trying to quit smoking, and he did it again the next day and the next day and the next day. Over a period of many, many years, he was a smoker, much like Elizabeth Holmes was a perpetual charlatan and a thief and a liar. So the reason that I'm so passionate about this case is because patients' lives were put at risk. Yeah, you can say $1 billion was raised, $1 billion was lost from Walgreens and Schultz, and a lot of wealth. Walton's put in $150 million, which is a rounding error. Yes, they're victims, and I can understand a lot of people don't have sympathy for them. My concern is the patients and the idea that people presumed it would be more reliable, it would be safer, instead misdiagnoses came. And with that, she could be on the right path to a better life if she said, I accept responsibility. knew better. I'm ashamed. I'm sorry. I knew better. The problem with this comparison, in my opinion, is while many people loathe these rich parents in the Varsity Blues case, they all accepted responsibility, or the lion's share of them did. They stood in front of a judge and said, I accept full responsibility for my conduct. I knew better. I had privilege and opportunities that most people can only dream. My behaviors created a distrust in the college admissions process. I knew better. I'm sorry. And they're felons and they went to prison and they will endure lifelong consequences. The reason, to a degree, I loathe Miss Holmes is because not once has she said what I said a moment ago. I accept full responsibility for my conduct. As a leader in this company, I had an obligation and role to do better. We don't hear that. I'm going to play a clip here in a moment where she's essentially blaming other people for her conduct, which is all she ever does. I'm not going to bore you with playing the SEC depositions or the myriad interviews that are up online on YouTube where you hear her blaming others. I'm not going to do that because your time is busy. I'm tired. You understand. But her whole path is to blame others for her conduct. So let's listen to this for a moment. I'm going to come down and break it down.
Instead, she blames it on flawed operations and personnel.
At the highest level, we didn't have the right leadership in the laboratory, and we didn't have the implementation of the quality system in terms of procedures and the associated documentation to ensure that we were realizing the quality standards that we hold ourselves to.
Of course, in the middle of all this are patients whose health depended on Theranos for accurate results.
There's this man who goes by the initials RC right now in Arizona, who is suggesting that the lab results that he got from Theranos were not accurate, and it led to him having a heart attack. Based on what you know, is it possible that what he's saying is true? Could he have gotten a lab result that was so askew that he didn't act on it, and then a month later he ended up having a heart attack?
I'm not the lab director, and so...
I know, but you're the CEO and founder of the company. I mean, this is as serious as it gets.
What I just heard does not sound like a leader to me. It sounds like someone who blames others. And that comes to the Tolstoy quote I remember reading from prison in 2009. And Tolstoy wrote, "There is no deed in this life so impossible that you cannot do it. Your whole life should be lived, as I recall, as a heroic deed." With that said, now let me transition to an interview that Miss Holmes did with Michael Krasny in 2014.
Welcome you, Elizabeth, and congratulations on the Horatio Alger Award.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, let's talk about how you got to be here or where you are. If we go back, I think we have to look at your lineage initially, because your great-grandfather was an inspiration, your parents were inspirations. I mean, this whole vision of yours and making a difference and doing the kinds of things that you're now doing to really revolutionize healthcare go back in a sense to childhood and to really your genealogy in many ways.
I grew up in a family that was very focused on the belief that we're all here for a reason, and we're here to try to make this world a better place, and that we have a purpose. And for me, I thought I was going to do what my dad did, which was work in disaster relief, because I grew up in a house in which I was surrounded by pictures of him helping people all over the world when really bad things happened. And over time, I started to see business as a vehicle for making a change in the world.
When you hear that discussion and that conversation, one, you have, in my opinion, if you were to listen to the whole video, and I did, you have a sycophant interviewer who hardly asks the question, cannot get to the point, rambles, and frankly, when Miss Holmes speaks, it's like it's like a politician. It's the art of not actually answering a question. It's almost like, what happened, what was just said? I have a 3-year-old son, and sometimes he does something, I ask him what happened, and I don't really get the answer after a few minutes of him trying to express it. But you want to know why it's okay? He's 3. He didn't drop out of Stanford, and he didn't raise $1 billion. So you hear people trying to interview her or just throw nothing but praise at her, and they don't really ask specific questions and get to the details. But in reading that Tolstoy quote and hearing what she just said, she viewed herself as some heroic character, as someone who was out to change the world. Yet leaders do not blame others. Leaders do not excuse their conduct. You're looking to change the world, you take ownership of it. And speaking of ownership, she was very acquiescent in or allowing people to compare her to others who dropped out of college early. Steve Jobs, Zuckerberg, Bill Gates all dropped out of college. Very quick and open to that attention. Yet when it came to the real day-to-day business, the idea of running this business properly with putting patients first, it was an inconvenience. They didn't want to do it the right way, and they took shortcuts. And the fame that came her way only propelled her to continue to lie, in my opinion. And that's why I come back to this Varsity Blues case. Regardless of how you feel about these parents, don't tell me that Lori Loughlin was a perpetual cheater. She was not. Do not tell me that Felicity Huffman was a perpetual cheater. She was not. Again, there is a big difference between lying once or twice and doing it over a sustained period of time. Do not tell me that Massimo Giannoli was a perpetual cheater when I remember wearing his clothes when I was in my teens growing up in Los Angeles, how he built that business from nothing. You may not like him because he's white and rich and privileged, but don't tell me that he's a perpetual cheater. Don't tell me there's any comparison between the Varsity Blues case and parents who were swept in by a con man to get their kids into school. It's wrong. They pled guilty. They went to prison. They're convicted felons. But don't tell me they built their businesses by graft and deceit and greed and treachery and lying. They didn't. It was an out-of-character mistake they made, and they were punished. Because we love stardom in this country, because we take pleasure in the pain of others, people got their pound of flesh, including the government and the U.S. attorney in Boston who was looking to advance his career. Consequences be damned. Coming back to Miss Holmes, there is no comparison between what she did. Her conduct, the only way that she's ever been in business is by lying and cheating. The only way that she raised money was by exaggerations. The only way that she has been able to earn a paycheck or eventually become at one point a billionaire was by making risk representations and lying and selling hopes and promises to people who might have been too willing to believe it or who actually were so excited about the idea. And I have no doubt people who invested and lost money believe this could change the world. Believe that Tolstoy quote that this Holmes is out here to live as a heroic person to truly change the world. And I have empathy for them. I don't care how rich they are if they're victims. I don't care how rich they are. They lost money, they're victims, but I care most about the patients. I care most about the people who had tests done and came back with unreliable results. And when the results came back, they believed them. And they went into a state of shock until the doctor said, go elsewhere to get the next test and let's compare them. And oh, thank goodness the other test came back, I'm okay. Yet when Miss Holmes is interviewed, as played earlier, she doesn't identify with those patients turned victims. Instead, she said, well, we had people working in the lab. That isn't leadership. That isn't heroic. The reason that I'm sympathetic to the parents in the Varsity Blues case is because they have accepted responsibility. They've said, we deserve to, we could do better. We should have done better. We knew better. We're, as human beings, at least I believe we're all capable of making bad decisions. I don't know you. I'm not indicting you. You may be perfect. I've made a lot of bad decisions in my life. I made decisions that led me to prison. I would do so many things differently throughout my life. But you know what gets me back on track? When I can authentically and genuinely say, I'm sorry. I knew better. I'll try to do better. This is my path to do better. And this is why it will never happen again. The reason I think Miss Holmes is generally so loathed is because she had unearned power, unearned fame. You may not love Massimo Giannoli or you may not know him, but just in researching and reading him, he earned every dollar that came his way, employing tens of thousands of people over the years and building a business. You may not love Lori Loughlin because of what she did, but she's entertained millions of people around the world and worked very hard to become an actress. Same thing with Felicity Huffman or myriad other people and parents in this Varsity Blues case you'll never know or come across. They didn't build their life and business by deceit and stealing. It was an out-of-character decision. I'm not excusing it, but in no way are they Elizabeth Holmes. In no way are they Elizabeth Holmes. I think Elizabeth Holmes will get convicted. I think she's going to get a much longer prison term because she couldn't do what leaders actually do. I'm sorry. I knew better. Maybe I tried to get somewhere too fast, Your Honor. Maybe at 19, dropping out of Stanford with 2 electrical engineer classes wasn't the best move. Maybe I should have continued my education, or worse, when Theranos began to really grow, and as I continued to raise huge sums of money, perhaps I should have paused and reassessed and paid more attention to what we were telling people before they gave us money. Because this had to do with patients and their lives, and we put them at risk. And Your Honor, if I may speak openly and honestly, I did get taken in by Fortune and Inc. and Jim Cramer interviewing me on Mad Money as if I'm a hero, and everyone telling me that they're mesmerized by me and I'm the next Steve Jobs. I bought into it, Your Honor. I bought into the stardom. I bought into the fame. It came here too quickly, and in retrospect, I now know that I was swept in. What I'm getting at here in this portion of the interview or this video is what she could begin to do to mitigate, what a real leader would do. But we don't have that here, simply blaming and excusing other people. Long before she blamed her conduct on Balwani, it was everyone else within the organization. My feeling of her will change. My opinion of her will begin to change when she looks at all of us. Forget about me, I'm a nobody. Once she looks at the patients and she says, I'm sorry. I knew better. You deserved better. I put my interest above yours. And the irony of that is she went into the medical space with the goal of changing the world. You go into the space to help people, and in the end, all you do is hurt them. Her life will get back on the right track once she says, I'm sorry. Her life will become better once she says, I'm sorry. America is a very forgiving place. Look at me. I went to federal prison for 18 months. I hurt people. I embarrassed my family. I created victims. I went to federal prison. I lost my career. I lost my licenses. I hurt people, but through hard work, not happy talk. Through discipline and integrity and working to build a new record, I overcame it. Knowing that some people would always castigate me as scum and as a felon. That's okay. And I would also tell Ms. Holmes, if you finally accept responsibility, here's the beauty. You don't need everyone in your corner. You don't need everyone in your corner, because you will never get everybody back in your corner, of course. I'll close with James Patterson, the author who I think has sold more books than anyone in the world. And forgive me, I will get this quote incorrectly, but I'm doing my best. At a conference, an interviewer asked James Patterson if he was concerned that other authors said he didn't have the best prose or the best diction and wasn't able to articulate as well as others. Did that impact him? And James Patterson said, I recognize there are some people who may not like the way I write and don't appreciate my prose, and I understand that a lot of people don't appreciate it. Thankfully, there are millions more who do, and that's what I would convey to Miss Holmes or anyone who's made bad decisions. Some people you will never get back on your side, and that's okay, but with acceptance of responsibility, with pledging to do better, with ownership of it, she can get back on the right path and begin to build a legacy, not just for her family, but for her new baby. And if I can do it, if parents in this Varsity Blues case can do it, she can do it, but not until there is a shift that starts with saying, I'm sorry, and here's my plan to do better. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, if you find value, please like and subscribe to this video. It's 8:30. I'm going to bed. Goodbye.